Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another interesting game of Bootleg or Not, because we've got ourselves the Dragon Eye Velociraptor here. Now this Velociraptor is a light and sound articulated raptor, but, when you look at it, it might look pretty cool at first, but it does bear a striking resemblance to the Kenner Velociraptor, so I very much so believe that this is, in fact, a bootleg Kenner figure, and, in fact, most of the listings that you'll find on eBay already have it labeled as being a bootleg of the Kenner Raptor. Specifically, the head sculpt, I think, is where it looks incredibly similar, but we will, of course, take a quick closer look at the figure, then bring the actual Kenner Raptor in to compare, so that we can try to either confirm or put to bed the idea that this is definitely a bootleg. I will say that I think for what it is, again, it's not going to be everyone's favorite raptor, it's not the best Velociraptor I've ever seen, but for the most part, it doesn't look terrible, I guess. It has some okay paintwork. I'm not a huge fan of the random stripes you see moving through the figure, but at least it does have a fully painted look. We have paint from head to tail, painted nails, all of that fun stuff. Some things that other companies that produce similar figures tend to miss. So, as always, let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So, of course, seeing as this is a green figure, it's going to wreak havoc on this camera, but you can see, again, it looks okay here in the head sculpt. It has some decent looking skin texture. Definitely some nice looking scale detail there on the lower jaw. Some okay looking skin texture up here on the upper jaw as well. You can see the nostrils are sculpted out. The eyes are not actually painted because they are given the glass eye treatment, because the figure is going to have a light up feature when we get to that point. I don't want to open this too far or it's going to probably start roaring, but you can see the teeth don't really look that great. They're sculpted kind of okay, but a little big and bulky. However, the paintwork for them is incredibly sloppy. You can see that they just basically gave them like a once over, maybe with a paintbrush, and didn't really bother to actually paint them out nicely. So there's a whole lot of green going on where there should be white when it comes to the teeth, and you can see that as you move through the entire figure. You can see the tongue in there as well is painted with a pinkish tone, but definitely not great paintwork for the inside of the mouth, not great sculpt work either. We do have a greenish tone for the majority of the body color, but as you move up here to the top of the head, you see a much darker green. You can also see that the scale detail does look pretty nice up there on the top of the head as well. As you move down into the neck, you could see like some skin wrinkles and stuff moving down. This arm is consistently going to be in the way over here because that arm is part of the action feature. That's how you activate the action feature, so it's always going to be in the way on this side. But you can see some decent looking skin texture as you move down. Again, we have that dark green moving along the upper side, and then you have this random striping effect. You can see the stripe right there. You have the same thing up here in the face, one stripe moving straight through the palate. You've got another stripe right there moving down back behind the eye. Kind of ugly. I don't know why they chose to give it that random striping effect moving through the figure. I think it honestly would have been just fine with only the greenish tones. But whatever. As you move down the arm, the skin texture again continues to look pretty decent. We have some nice scoots moving down the fingers. The nails are painted with a black, and not just a black, but you can see a nice glossy black, so that looks pretty good. As you move back here into the body, you can again see a stripe moving down here into the stomach, randomly placed. The skin texture looks okay back here, but by no means is it amazing. It's decent for what it is, but I honestly don't think they bootlegged the entire figure from Kenner. If this is in fact a Kenner bootleg, I feel like the body itself, or at the very least like the stomach region, is maybe from a different figure. Maybe they sculpted it themselves or just altered the Kenner one and kind of retextured it. I don't know, but it doesn't look all that Kennerish as far as the detail goes to me. Just has kind of more of a generic look and feel. But you can see, again, we have that dark green continuing to move along the back. As you lead down into the thigh, you can see the muscle definition, some decent looking skin texture, the nice bulging calf muscle right there. We've got a kneecap present. And then as you move down into the foot, you've got some scoots moving down the front of the foot, down into the toes. You can see the sickle claw over there. We definitely, again, have a nice glossy black for the nails. We do have a dew claw, and yes, it is painted, so that's pretty crazy. And then as as we move back up out toward the tail, you can see again that we lead out with a nice curve to the tail. That darker green runs the entire way out. We again have more of that striping moving through. Some decent looking detail on the underside. You can see the compartment for the battery and stuff. Nothing overly amazing down here. The legs do articulate, which you can see. They actually articulate really nicely. Looks like we would have articulation in the tail, but that does not articulate actually. When you come to the other side, the leg again articulates very, very smoothly. You also can articulate this arm up. You can go pretty far, but it does kind of get stuck at a certain point. But you also, of course, have articulation in the other arm, but that activates the action feature, and you do have an articulated jaw, which is also part of the action feature. Not a huge difference from one side to the other when it comes to the appearance. The only real big difference over here is that the one leg is kind of taking a step forward, so you can see the difference in the overall visual of the leg and everything. You can get a better shot, I think, of the foot on this side. And then there is also an area right here where the sound would escape from, so some random holes in the side of the figure, which are pretty ugly. And then we have this little area back here, which is just like a random branding here on the side of the figure, which is very ugly. But overall, it's sad because I feel like this is the more superior side because this arm isn't up in the way on this side, but it is what it is, I guess. Regardless, the figure, again, has been called a bootleg for a very long time, and the figure that I think is in question as far as being potentially the figure that it's been bootlegged from would be this Kenner Velociraptor. And again, I actually expected the head sculpt to look way more similar when I first pulled it up than it does. You can see, looking at the two, they actually look very, very different. And that is surprising to me. I really was not prepared for that. So the Raptor head sculpt from Kenner obviously has a very different style of articulation, where the upper head, or the upper jaw and everything here kind of articulates, whereas the lower jaw articulates on this one. But you can see the thickness as well as the length of the head and jaw of the Dragon Eye version is definitely significantly different compared to the Kenner version. Now let's take a look at the arms. I mean, even the arms and hands, although they look very similar as far as like the way that they're textured with like the scoots and stuff, the positioning of the fingers, the length of the fingers, all of that stuff is very different compared to what we see on the Dragon Eye version. The legs are also another area that are kind of questionable because they have an extremely similar look, but when you actually do get close and look at them, again, they actually have a very different look, which is surprising. Even the way that the toe is sculpted on the Kenner version is drastically different. Like the sickle claw toe there is drastically different compared to what you see on the Dragon Eye version, and the tail is very different as far as everything goes, pose and everything. The detailing in the body is also very different. So when it comes to the Kenner Raptors, there are others, of course. We've also got the Screaming Raptor, which you can see here, and I definitely don't think there are enough similarities between these two to consider maybe this one as being the culprit as far as like what figure they bootlegged it from. I really don't think it's this one, but there is another one that looks strikingly similar, and that would be the Cyclops Raptor. Now this one you can definitely see looks extremely similar when it comes to the overall visual, but still at the same time I would say a little bit different. You know, there's definitely some, if we put the heads side by side here, you can definitely see similarities, but at the same time a good bit of difference. So man, this one's really tough. Like sometimes it's a little more obvious and I can come to an actual like decision as far as what I think, but this one's just so hard. Like it's really a tough decision. It looks like it could be potentially taken from the Cyclops Raptor, but if it was, they definitely altered the figure significantly to change it up to the point where it doesn't look, you know, like it could be a bootleg. It looks like it may be its own original figure. Also, when it comes to the action feature, again, as I said, we just push this hand down. And you can see it, we've got like a jaw snapping action feature. Now it's not going to work. Wow, I killed it apparently. Okay, well, I'm not really sure what just happened. Clearly the action feature doesn't work perfectly, and that may be because the batteries might be dying. I'm not too sure, but we did get a little bit of the sound there, which... oh, there we go. kind of generic dinosaur noises. I guess I'm going to have to replace my batteries or something. I don't know, maybe they're dying. Well, actually, I'll probably take the batteries back out because I don't really intend on, making those noises with this figure very often. But you can see at least what the action feature and the articulation of the jaw is like. As far as a size goes for the Raptor, it is very, very similar in size to the Kenner Raptors. Lengthwise, you're looking at about 8 inches, or around 20, maybe 20 and a half if you go to the lower jaw when it comes to centimeters. And then height-wise to the top of the head, approaching 3 inches, but not quite there, or a little under 7.5 centimeters. But to the top of the tail, I'd say almost 5 inches on the dot, or maybe just a hair under, or around 12.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our Dragon Eye Velociraptor. And you can see again, it's got a very similar size to what you would normally see for a Kenner-type Velociraptor, as well as fairly similar in size, but maybe a little bit larger than a Mattel Raptor. And to show you that, here is a Mattel Velociraptor, which you can very clearly see again is an extremely similar size to the Dragon Eye version, but the Dragon Eye version just has a little bit more body mass and length to it. But when you bring in the Kenner Velociraptors, again, here is the Cyclops Raptor. You can see they're pretty similar in size. The Cyclops Raptor, I think, would win this round just because it has more length to it, but maybe another reason why this was considered a bootleg for so long is because it does sort of have a similar pose to the Cyclops Raptor, with one foot stepping forward and kind of crouching forward. Definitely looks, at first glance kind of similar. If you don't really look into it a little more, I could easily see why someone might pass this off as being a definitive bootleg. And then again, same case here for the other Kenner Velociraptor. For another version here, we can see they're very similar in size. Between the two, absolutely extremely similar in size, but very similar in appearance, just a little bit different. So when it comes to this Dragon Eye Velociraptor, I personally think, now I don't know if this is going to be a controversial one or not, because it seems as though everybody's already written this off as being a bootleg from what I've read over the years, but I think it's not a bootleg. I don't think it is. I think it's just based heavily on the Kenner Raptors, because although it does look very similar, especially in the head sculpt, there is just so much that's just different about this Raptor. And even if they had taken the head sculpt of one of the Kenner Raptors and used it for this Dragon Eye version, they drastically reshaped the head. Well, maybe not drastically, but they definitely reshaped the head and pretty much every aspect of it. So, I don't understand what the point would even be in bootlegging it if you're just going to go and alter the entire thing anyway. So, in my opinion, and it may be the wrong answer, it may not be, it may in fact be a bootleg, but I think it's just based on, when Dragon Eye was making this Raptor, they had taken a look at the Kenner Raptors, I think, for inspiration on how to create their own. And that would be my guess as far as what happened here. Because honestly, it's not that bad of a figure. It's got a decent sculpt, some okay looking detail. It shows pretty much all the things you would want to see, like musculature and some okay scale detail in the face. You've got skin creases and stuff. The sculpt overall looks pretty decent for what it is. The paint apps as well are not that bad. Not great, because you have those random stripes and stuff through the course of the figure. I don't really like those, but as a whole, I think the paint apps are fairly smooth. We've got a fully painted look. We have painted nails, so decent paintwork. The only area that besides the striping, that I'm not a fan of would be the mouth. I think the sculpting of the teeth is pretty bad, and the paintwork for the teeth also is pretty bad, but it's not the worst thing ever. It also does have some articulation, and the articulation is pretty smooth. It also has an action feature, which has the most generic dinosaur noise ever, and light up eyes, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I can understand why they would do that, because this figure was clearly aimed at children, so children would of course enjoy that. And again, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that arm is kind of stuck up in the air, but that's how you activate the action feature, so it is what it is. But overall, I'm very interested in your opinions. Do you think this is a bootleg or not? So let me know in the comment section, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.